Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here today to complete my Bitter Booker year and talk about the winner of the 2023 Booker Prize, which was announced earlier today. I actually managed to watch a good chunk of the ceremony here in the United States where I live and watched live, but then we took Teddy for a walk and did some other things. I actually managed to sit down on the day that the prize was announced and film this for you. The winner, I should say, before we get any further, is Prophet Song by Paul Lynch. And I should also say, I really should have trusted myself, because when the Longlist was announced, I had an inkling, like, this feels like a very politically important book. And then as people began reading the Longlist, I am not one of those people who read the entire Longlist, but following along with a bunch of people who did, the way everyone talked about Prophet Song, even people who didn't quite like it, talked about it feeling politically resonant and urgent. And when they announced the shortlist and it was on it, and there were surprises from the shortlist, we'll talk about that in a moment, my immediate reaction was, oh, Prophet Song is going to win. And I allowed myself to get distracted, second guess myself, because the other heavy hitter on the shortlist, the way it turned out to be, was The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. And I really started thinking, the more people started reading The Bee Sting, it was released in the US, people really started reading it and loving it, and it has appeared on a lot of best books of the year lists here in the United States. So I really got in my own head and started thinking, oh, I think The Bee Sting is going to win. And I felt really certain about that. And then this morning, I did start to think, I really had been very sure that Prophet Song was going to win. Nah, it's still going to be The Bee Sting. I should have just trusted my instinct, listened to myself, don't second guess these things. So that's the winner. Just to, zoom out for a moment and talk. So if you've noticed my shirt, we have had a great Thanksgiving week here in the United States. We decorated for Christmas last weekend, and we had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we've really been enjoying a lot of stuff kicking off the holiday season this year. Just to, mention the shirt, which is one of my favorites. But anyway, I kind of hinted at the fact that this is my Bitter Booker year, and that really started with the Longlist. I think there were some big omissions on the list, most notably, to me, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I know a lot of people were upset or commented after my Longlist reaction to say, get over it, Demon Copperhead already won a lot. There are people who are not a fan of Demon Copperhead. To me, I didn't expect Demon Copperhead to win the Booker Prize after it won the Pulitzer and the Women's Prize. Although I really think it would have been amazing for a book to pull off that hat trick. Maybe someday it will happen. It was not in the cards. I think it would be incredibly difficult. When something has already won 2 significant literary prizes, it's really hard to win a third. People start to feel like, all right, we got to spread the wealth. But I thought it would at least make the Longlist, and then it didn't. And there were some other big name omissions. This is really the big one to me, and that's what kicked off my Bitter Booker year. The other thing is that a lot of the books on the Longlist sounded interesting to me, but not like anything that I would immediately run out to read. So I started thinking, maybe as people read the Longlist, maybe other books will jump out and I'll be interested in reading them. And that didn't quite happen. Everybody is allowed to have an off year with a book prize, and I think this was my off year for the Booker. The nice thing about this is that there's always next year. So maybe next year I'll be a little more invested in the prize. I did, since I've done reactions to the Longlist and the Shortlist, I did want to at least film a reaction video to this. And I am excited for Prophet Song. I don't want to allow my Bitter Booker year to give you the impression that I'm not happy for Prophet Song or Paul Lynch. It is a book that I'm going to be interested in reading at some point. I don't think I'm going to try to cram it in before the end of the year, especially since it won't even be released in the United States until December 12th. But it is something that I would be interested in reading. Paul Lynch is an Irish author. He is, I believe, according to the Booker website, which will be linked down below, he is the 5th Irish writer to win the Booker Prize. And what they say is, for his exhilarating and propulsive portrait of a nation sliding into tyranny and one woman's attempts to hold her family together. So right there from that little blurb of the book, you can see why it seems extremely relevant for the world today. There are a lot of threats of tyranny, uncomfortably so. It's kind of shocking, even You know, you have the looming presidential election in the United States, the election in Argentina. Italy elected a fascist for the first time in a long time. You know what's going on in the world. It's scary. And that was why I thought Prophet Song seemed like an obvious choice for the prize, given the way the shortlist turned out. We'll talk about the shortlist in just a moment. But I am interested in reading it. I have heard some good things about it as people read their way through the long list. I just don't think I'll prioritize it. And this is especially interesting because, if you follow along, Joel and I are going to Ireland and Scotland next year. And I have talked about wanting to read more Irish and Scottish authors before we go. And Paul Lynch is Irish. So it seems like a natural fit and a sort of solid addition to my reading list for before we go to Ireland and Scotland. I did also just realize, though, that the runway to our trip is not that long because we're going in May. And I've been trying to cram in a lot of year-end stuff, books that I want to read before the end of the year. And so I don't have a whole lot of time. There are definitely authors that I would prioritize before Prophet Song in my list of Irish and Scottish authors to get to. However, that is in the mix, and I'm looking forward to reading it, and I'm happy for Paul Lynch. He seemed properly surprised. I shouldn't say properly. People are allowed to react in whatever way their emotions go, but he looked very surprised when it was announced, and he gave a great speech, and so I'm happy for him. I don't want to give the impression that I am not happy for Paul Lynch or for Prophet Song. I will hopefully at some point read the book, but it is my bitter book of the year, and just want to be honest about that. But again, it doesn't mean I'm not going to follow the booker. It doesn't mean I don't like the booker. It just means for me, there's always next year. Maybe next year I'll be a lot more excited about the list. Now, let's quickly talk about that shortlist and a little bit about the long list. So when they announced the long list, to me, it really felt like they were omitting authors like Barbara Kingsolver in order to sort of stack the deck for Sebastian Barry or Twan, who had been in the mix. I believe this was his third time on a long list, and had been in the mix on the shortlist in the past. So it really felt like they had sort of deliberately left people like Barbara Kingsolver, Salman Rushdie, Zadie Smith, the other names, off of the list in order to really focus on them and sort of give them their time to shine. And that really turned out to be an inaccurate assumption on my part, because neither one of those authors ended up making it onto the shortlist. So that kind of shut me up and definitely proved that wasn't the case. And my immediate reaction was like, oh, this is definitely going to be Prophet Song's year then. And then I wildly went off and started thinking that the Bee Sting was going to win. And I will say this, if you follow along, my thoughts about Bee Sting. I have eased up a little bit. So I haven't read the Bee Sting, but I did read Skippy Dies, which was Paul Murray's previous book, and I thought it was way too long, and didn't ultimately like it. But I got so frustrated because I was like, this should have been over like 100 pages ago, and it's still going. And for that reason, when I heard that Paul Murray had another book coming out, I said, I bet a lot of people are going to be very excited about this, and I'm happy for those people, but I am not one of them. So that has really continued. A lot of people have been enjoying the Bee Sting, but there have been complaints about it. And the complaints, even from people who liked the book, very much made me think, I'm happy for the people who are liking this. I'm going to sit this one out, because I feel like based on the complaints, I would just fall into the same trap that I did with Skippy Dies. And it's not something that I would ultimately enjoy. However, we did go to Montana Book Company on Black Friday. So usually I would do Small Business Saturday, but I was actually texting with Charlie, who's one of the owners, on Thanksgiving, because I wanted to say Happy Thanksgiving. And they mentioned that they are usually significantly less busy on Friday. So if we went on Saturday, they would probably just be able to say hi and, would be too busy to actually chat. So they said, but it would be good to see you. And then Joel and I woke up on Friday and we're like, well, do you want to just go? So we did. And it was actually lovely. I think I'm so anti-Black Friday because of the big corporate side of Black Friday that it never even occurred to me to shop on a Black Friday at an independent bookstore. So my PSA for this is, yes, support small business, but I support small business throughout the year. And if you follow along, you know that. But so I went there on Black Friday and actually was able to talk to all of the employees. And they have an employee named Essie who has very similar taste in books to me. And I don't usually get a chance to talk to Essie while I'm in the store. Usually she's the one who answers the phone if I call the store. So we kind of chat about books then. But I actually was able to talk to her in the store about books, and she asked me if I had read The Bee Sting, and I said, no, I really didn't like Skippy Dies, gave her the whole spiel, and she said, well, I haven't read Skippy Dies, but I really liked it. And she said, I know you like family books about complicated families and all that stuff, and based on these other things you like, maybe you'll fall into the same trap as Skippy Dies, but maybe you'll like it. So, if you don't read it, that's fine, but I think there's a chance that you might actually like it. And I think that's the thing that really made me rethink, she's right. There are elements of this book that I do respond to and like in literature, so maybe I'm being a little bit unfair. And then I started thinking about Ann Patchett, because I didn't read an Ann Patchett book for a very long time because I read Run and didn't like it. And then this year I read Tom Lake and really liked it. So I should give Paul Murray a second chance. And thank you to Essie for... Finally, I guess a lot of people have said, yeah, you might like it under these circumstances. And I think it took someone who knows me in person, which is unfair because she didn't really say anything all that different from what a lot of people have commented. But, sometimes you just need to hear it, the same message from a specific source. And Essie was the source that finally cracked through and did it. And, so I did get on the wait list at my local library for The Bee Sting. It is a very long wait list. I don't think it hit 20. It's somewhere in the high teens where people are ahead of me on the list. So I don't think I will be getting it before the end of the year, which is fine because I would not really want to prioritize it before the end of the year anyway. Like Essie's favorite book of the year was Heaven and Earth Grocery Store and followed by The North Woods. And those are the two books that I really want to get to at the end anyway. And I feel like that's why I really trust her opinion on this. But anyway, point just being, I am having a second thoughts about whether or not I'm going to read The Bee Sting. So I'm on the wait list at my local library. If I get the book and am not feeling it, I'm not going to feel obligated to read it. If I start it and I'm not liking it, I would absolutely allow myself to bail. But this is huge progress on that front. I just kind of wanted to mention that because that, it's a huge turnaround from where I stood on The Bee Sting in the past. For the other books, I don't really think there was too much on the long list that didn't make the short list that I really felt passionate about. The other books from the long list that did not make it to the short list were In Ascension by Martin MacInnes, which has really been everywhere. And a lot of people have discovered because of the long list. And really that is the power of a long list. And it has been good to see for that. I don't have any plans to read it because it's not the type of book I typically respond to, but I'm happy for all. This is my thing about the Booker year. It's my bitter Booker year, but I am really happy for all of the people who have been excited about the long list and the short list and the winner and who have discovered books because of it. It's just hasn't been a year that I have responded to. And there was All the Little Bird Hearts by Viktoria Lloyd-Barlow, Pearl by Sean Hughes, How to Build a Boat by Elaine Feeney, and A Spell of Good Things by bámi Adébáyọ. The shortlist had Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. That's a book that I would consider reading, but it's so low on my priority list that the likelihood is that I will never end up getting around to it. And that's just the way it is. If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery, that is what, being honest, that is the inclusion that really made me bitter about this year because I think Demon Copperhead is so much better than If I Survive You. I was really not a fan of If I Survive You. And one of the things that has been interesting as people started working through their long list, somebody commented and said, I feel like people in the UK like If I Survive You more than people in the United States did. And I think that's kind of true. And it's just an interesting thing. So If I Survive You was the book that, made me bitter that Demon Copperhead didn't make it on because I didn't like If I Survive You, and I loved Demon Copperhead, which didn't make the list. And then If I Survive You made the short list. So that is the book that really kind of made it my bitter Booker year. Again, being honest. And then there was This Other Eden by Paul Harding. I did see a lot of people predicting that Paul Harding was going to win, and I really didn't think that he would. And I will say, I think if he had won, a lot of people would have been upset because this has been a very cilantro book this year. I think it's very well written. I like it and respect it more than I love it. So I wouldn't have been upset if it had won, but I think a lot of people would have been. So I'm not surprised that it ultimately did not win. I'm not saying that the jury decided based on what will make people happy. I don't think that's what they did, but I do think that a lot of people would not have been thrilled if This Other Eden by Paul Harding had won. Now, one of my things about the Booker is because I am such a Pulitzer Prize enthusiast, I am waiting for the day when someone becomes the first author to win both a Pulitzer Prize and a Booker Prize. And of course, I would have been thrilled if it had been Barbara Kingsolver, especially since if she had won for Demon Copperhead, she would have won a Pulitzer and a Booker for the same book. And I think that is going to be the thing that will be extremely difficult to pull off. The best we can hope for right now is that someone becomes the first person to have won a Pulitzer and a Booker in their career. And Paul Harding, love This Other Eden or hate This Other Eden, he would have ticked that box. And part of me was rooting for it just for that, because I'm so excited for it to happen that I would have loved. And I like Tinkers and This Other Eden enough that I would have been happy if it had happened. So we just need to look to the future and wait for someone to become the first. And maybe it'll go the other way, actually. I feel like I keep looking for someone who has won a Pulitzer Prize in the past to win a Booker. But there are Americans who have won the Booker Prize, and it's possible that one of them will win a Pulitzer. And that actually only just occurred to me right this second. So, I need to look at the Americans who have won a Booker and see if any of them have something coming out in the future, because I'm just waiting for that to happen. And then Western Lane by Chetna Maroo. That is a book that I would read. It's higher on my priority list than Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. And, I don't have any plans to get to it anytime soon. I don't own a copy, but I would actually read that book. And then there's The Bee Sting, which I already talked about. So that is my overall opinion about the long list and the short list for the Booker this year. Circling back to Prophet Song, again, I am happy for Paul Lynch. I'm happy for Prophet Song. And I think it makes sense. I do. And that's why when the shortlist turned out to be what it was, I immediately thought to myself, ooh, Prophet Song is going to win. And I should have stuck with that instinct, but I didn't. And, so I understand why it won based on the content and the relevance of what it is about. But I've also heard a lot of really good things about it. And, again, it has not been released in the United States yet. The date of the release is December 12th. Here in the United States. So, if you're really impatient, you can still order it from the UK, but odds are with the time it would take to get it shipped across to the United States, you kind of might as well pre-order a copy from your local independent bookstore or bookshop.org, because odds are you'd get it around the same time. If you ordered it now from the UK, yeah. So you might as well just pre-order from your local indie at this point. And I am excited about it. I'm not going to purchase it. I'm not going to pre-order it. I will probably get on the hold list at my library for next year. I don't want to try to cram it in for this year, but I would read it, and I'm happy for it. So ends my bitter Booker year. I will also add, stay tuned, because the New York Times did its 100 notable books list last week, and I had my video post on Saturday. I'll link it down below. They did announce that they are going to be releasing their top 10 books of the year on Tuesday. So if you're as excited about that list as I am, my goal is to film a video on Tuesday morning, edit it, and post it the same day, just like I'm trying to do here. So stay tuned for that. Book award season is over, but we are in the thick of best of the year season, and that has me really excited. I'm more excited about best of the year season than I was about the Booker. But again, there is always next year, and that's the nice thing about these book prizes. That's kind of the way it works. Sometimes there's an off year for you. It's the same thing with my beloved Academy Awards. Some years Crash wins Best Picture. Some years Green Book wins Best Picture. But some years Moonlight wins Best Picture. And you really hang in there for those years. So that's my bitter Booker year. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the winner, about the shortlist, the long list. any of that in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.